Hey everybody, welcome to our weekly Data Talk, a show where we talk with data science leaders from around the world. Today, we're chatting with Lexy Kassan.
Yep.
Did I get it right?
You got it.
All right. And we might hear Cody, your dog?
Dakota, yeah.
Dakota. We might hear Dakota in the background in today's episode, which is all cool with me because I love dogs. So I found Lexy. I was doing some research on data science podcasts, and I ran across the Data Science Ethics podcast. And I was like, who does this show? And I started researching. I found the website, Lexy, and I was reading all about it. This is like the coolest thing. And I was like, who is the host? Who is the host? And I was Googling everywhere. And then I found, I think I found your profile on LinkedIn.
Okay.
And I think that's where I saw the association. And then, so then I reached out and you're like, yeah, let's do it. So I was like, cool. And so then in preparation for today's interview, I was like looking at your LinkedIn profile. And then I was like, I found your website. Mm-hmm. And so at first when I discovered your awesome blog, and by the way, guys, check out Lexy Kassan's blog on data science. I went right over to the About Me section, which is always my favorite part of a blog. You get to know like the personality of the guest. And I saw that the first line was like a no doubt quote. I'm just a girl in the world. And I said, this is really cool. And then I read your personal bio, and you were just hilarious. First of all, you're just hilarious. I think you're really good. Your personality really shines through in your writing, and I think you're a really cool writer. And I love the fact that you like bring that personality into when you write about like really technical things, code and programming and data science. I love that you like bring that in to your writing. So anyway, I wanted to, I guess, just start off with like your just like you as a writer. Because you're really, really good at writing, and I'm curious like how you got into that.
Which is hilarious because probably my least favorite subject in school was English, and I despised writing. I swore to myself up, down, left, right, and center that I would not be writing anything more than a paragraph when I got out of school. And then skipped to one of my first jobs. I was writing like 100 and 200 page technical documentation and started writing. And then the phenomenon that is the internet really became pervasive with things like LiveJournal. Everyone was a writer. Everyone had content to share. And the idea of personal branding became much more important. I never really thought about it in that way until a little bit further into my career. But sharing and just putting content out there for friends about topics that we had in common was something that became a part of my, I wouldn't say daily routine, but a weekly routine of at least putting something out that my friends would see. And because I always felt like this is just my friends that are going to see this, nobody else, who would ever find me? Nobody else is going to see this. Only the people I know are going to see this. So I felt like it was appropriate in that setting to share my own sense of humor, to share my own perspective on things, because you kind of feel like you're in that echo chamber of comfort and friendship. And that's very much the way that I approach content in general. Is I presume that the only people that will find my blog and my podcast and everything else are people I know, and that's totally not the case now. And it's been very jarring for me to hear from people I've never known from around the world that say, hey, I found this one article about some random Netezza function or whatever, and that was really helpful. I'm like, oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Who are you?
Yeah.
But, I just always approach writing now as something that I'm doing mostly for fun. And while for a time in pulling my own teeth, basically wrote for search engine optimization purposes and things like that, that was never my passion. It really is more around explaining things and being more of a teacher and a mentor. I do a lot of that in my work now. So I don't feel like I approach content as I must have a formal document and everything should be laid out perfectly. I just kind of let it flow the way I would talk to anybody, almost as I'm transcribing a conversation.
Yeah, I do see that you're very much a teacher at heart, and I actually want to talk to you a little bit about the work you're doing at the elementary school.
Sure.
'Cause I definitely like see that in the way that you approach writing, and also you don't take yourself too seriously. Like you just have fun with it, and you're there to help explain. And like you said, like you might originally be writing for yourself or for your friends, but then down the line, like all of a sudden you're getting reached out to different people around the world going, hey, thank you so much for that article. It really helped me. When did you, so you mentioned LiveJournal.
Yeah.
That brings me back to like, I'm thinking like 1990, I'm thinking about 1999, yeah. Right? So that was like
probably like 2002-ish.
Those are like the cool days of blogging because it was like you and your like 8 friends,
yeah.
Right? And you know, your blog roll. It was like you'd all read each other's stuff.
Absolutely.
That was awesome. I loved those days.
Yeah.
So were you like before blogging? Were you like journaling beforehand, or was that not even like you didn't really like writing earlier on?
The only things I ever enjoyed writing was actually poetry, and I mean, I've thought many moons ago when I was like bitty, I thought about putting together books of poetry and all that, and it just seemed so cliche that I didn't bother to follow up. But I'm such a nerd that it just I was like, I'm just gonna follow the numbers. Numbers are my passion. I'm just gonna do that. And I still have some of that poetry somewhere. I don't know where at this point, but I have some of it. And it just, I don't know. It was not something that I particularly thought would be a big part of my life, and it's not necessarily. But every now and again, I get inspired and I'll write something. And then I think, you know, over time, because I've written so many different types of things, you know, it really has become a bigger part of my persona, is developing content in these different ways, whether it be kind of short essays or things to explain concepts. I've done a lot of documentation work, obviously. I mean, we all do as part of our jobs. The irony being that, you know, here I'm like, I'm going to follow numbers because I'll never have to write. Sure. Yeah. How well that work out? But no, I mean, I think, you know, it was always fun, and especially to be able to connect with friends, and really, I feel like over time the internet has adapted that same mentality, but made it shorter form. So instead of LiveJournal, where you'd have the big, long, expansive post of everything that had happened in a person's backstory, you now have Facebook, where it's kind of this up to the minute, or Twitter, where it's even shorter, and you have to really condense your thoughts. But because you have the frequency and the ease of posting that content, you don't have to do the long form of writing. So, I mean, I think it's just shifted over time as to kind of how people consume content and how it therefore is created as well.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the long form content. I think things like Medium, where people have space to like write out lengthy content and really go like a deep dive into a topic. I appreciate that. But you're right, like kind of the trend is the shorter form content, more in the moment storytelling, what's happening at that minute in time, where you can shoot a quick video or something like that. Yeah, it's been very interesting, like kind of watching the evolution of content online, and how we're seeing more live video and more in the moment video content. I read in your bio about your early love of math, and you just said like, you know, you gravitated towards math. You didn't really like the writing part. Can you talk about like your love of math early on?
Sure. I think the earliest I remember really enjoying math was in 3rd grade, although I'm sure that it started well before that. I was in a program that was kind of an accelerated program. And in my class, there were 20 boys and 4 girls. This was in the days when, to get into those types of programs, you had to do more kind of pattern recognition, math types of things. And at the time, there was this emphasis on boys are better at math and all of that. And I know that I've written on that topic on my blog, because I fully denounce that idea. But I remember being in this class in 3rd grade, and I still remember some of the kids who were in that class with me. I still keep in touch with some of them from way back then.
That's cool.
Yeah, and we had this set of books that were all math problems. And to me and several of the boys in the class, it was a race through those books. Like, there were 12 books, and so help me, I was going to be in front of the guys. And man, like, the long division tripped me up for a little while, but as soon as I got past that, I was off to the races. I was flying through that stuff. And I loved it. I loved that little bit of competitive nature, the fact that there was a correct answer that I could get to, and it made sense to me. Math still generally makes sense to me. Data makes sense to me. It has, since I first understood the concept of databases and even Excel spreadsheets, I just kind of got it. I tend to think of, like, I have these theories that are completely unproven, but whatever, I can say them.
Those kind of theories.
I have these theories, and one of my theories is that you're either an algebra person or a geometry person, like a calculus person or a geometry person. I'm a calculus person. I can do that kind of linear thinking, and so the logic of using data and the logic of understanding math problems, for the most part, I get. Like, I just kind of have it. Geometry, pulling teeth. Could not do it. Trigonometry, same camp. Like, 100% not my bag. I muddled my way through, but it was not my strong suit. And so while I'm a numbers person, it's like a subset of the numbers. In the same way, I think of my other theory is that you're either an econ person or a finance person, and I fall on the econ side.
Oh, interesting.
I tend to think of, like, econ is sort of the natural math, the natural inclination, and finance is kind of contrived and artificial to my mind. So these are my theories, completely unfounded, but my theories.
I love the way you like broke those up. I never thought about those different camps when you talked about, like, geometry and calculus. I love the way you explain that and divide those things up, because I like fell apart when I hit geometry.
Yeah, just like the same way I can sit there and do calculus in my head, but if you tell me, like, all right, these boxes need to go on that set of shelves, I'm at a loss. I'm like, man, somebody else do the real world Tetris, because I'm done. I'm just going to leave the boxes sitting on the floor, and I assume that they can't go on the shelf. This is an unsolvable problem.
I think it's I love that approach and how you're thinking about it, because I think I know for me, like, I felt good going through algebra, and then when I hit geometry and trigonometry, I like fumbled my way through it. I was like, what in the world? I really struggled, especially in geometry. Trigonometry, I started like, okay, getting a little bit better, and it wasn't until I did a little bit of higher level math later on, the things. It was not geometry, basically, and I did do a little bit better. But I never even realized that what the differences are that you just explained. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's more like spatial awareness and spatial conception versus linear conception. And I have good friends of mine who are not, they don't call themselves math people. They think that they're horrible at math. But so help me, if I said, okay, can this set of items fit into this space? They, in their head, just poof, it happens.
Wow.
It's just there. And I sit there in amazement, like, you just solved this problem. Like, these are the people that if you gave them the salesman's dilemma, they would figure it out. Like, they couldn't tell you how they got there, but they would know that there's a way to do this, and so help them. It'd probably be right. But they don't think of all the steps. They just get there. In this very spatial area, and that's the thing I don't have. So yes, I'm a math person. I'm a nerd, but it's a subset. It's a small little part of that.
So when you you loved math, you finished high school, and then you're now gonna go to college and choose a major. Tell me about that. Tell me about that process.
Yeah, I went into college as a declared medieval and Renaissance studies major.
Wow.
Yep. After all of my, I don't like language. I don't like history. Like I liked history. I didn't like language. I didn't like English. I didn't want to do any of that. But somehow I really like. I loved the era. I still love the era. I really wanted to study medieval and Renaissance studies, and so I went in to college as a declared medieval and Renaissance studies major. And then because it was an interdepartmental major, it required 3 or 4 different departments to coordinate their efforts to offer all of the courses required for this major. And that didn't happen. I got there, I think in total, I took 2 classes that would have been required for that major, maybe 3, maybe if I stretched it. It was not feasible to do in any sort of reasonable time period for college. So if I had wanted to be a professional student, I could have eventually gotten that major, but it probably would have taken me until about now. So it just was not happening. And as I continued to take courses and kind of select my courses, I started to take more political science courses. I really loved the comparative politics, especially international studies, all of that. I didn't want to focus just on the United States. I always wanted a broader perspective of world politics. And so I took a lot of courses there. And then econ, I fell into, it was kind of funny. I was looking through the course catalog. This was when the course catalog was an actual physical book.
I know it. I flipped through it too.
Oh yeah. And it was like the coolest little guide to college as far as I was concerned. And I, at one point, I wanted to be a triple major in medieval Renaissance studies, political science, and economics, not because I had taken economics, because I thought the description of economics sounded really fascinating.
Oh, wow.
So I had done that, and I figured out exactly how I could do it. I also came into college with a lot of AP credits from high school that carried over. So my plan was to actually graduate a year early, which I did end up doing, though not with a triple major. Because
I can't believe you're even thinking about a triple major. I mean, I was just trying to get 1 major, and then I had friends that were like doing 2, and I'm like, I don't even know how you're doing that. You're thinking 3.
I had it all mapped out, and had the courses been offered in the exact timing I needed them, that would have worked out great. But they didn't. And it was a triple major, double minor in finance and accounting, if I remember correctly, the way that I mapped it out. I had pages, handwritten pages of this stuff. You're
like, how can I get 8 years of college into 3?
Pretty much, yeah, bang for the buck, man. Well, I mean, the other cool thing was, I'm very fortunate. I very much acknowledge that I had a lot of privilege and a lot of help. My father promised me 4 years of college. And so I kind of gamed the system. I said, okay, so that means if I graduate in 3, you'll pay for a year of grad school. And that's exactly what happened.
That is so cool. I love your thinking, and that's so cool that you actually did that.
Yeah. So thanks, Dad. Thank you again for college. But yeah, so I ended up graduating with a major in economics. I was originally going to do a Bachelor of Arts. I dropped the medieval and Renaissance studies one, again, because I couldn't find the classes. I ended up moving the political science from a major to a minor because I kind of got bored. After a while, there just weren't the classes that I wanted to take. They really wanted to push a lot of people to taking more domestic study kind of stuff, more U.S. only, U.S. policy, and I just wasn't interested. I really wanted more of the international. I basically maxed out what I could do there. So I dropped it to a minor so I didn't have to take any more classes, kept going. Yeah, it was it was a fun time. I very much was the nerdy one. In fact, I remember going into a class when I was in college it was the first day of the semester. And there I was, and somebody came in and they're like, hey, you're that girl that's always in the library. I'm like, wow, that's how I'm known on a campus of like how many tens of thousands of people. Someone recognizes me as the girl that's always in the library.
Oh, that's so funny.
I am such a nerd. Oh
my gosh.
Yeah. Yep, that was me.
I love the library. I was English lit major, so I was always in the library anyways. I loved it.
So you're on the opposite side of the spectrum here.
I was totally opposite side of the spectrum. I when I saw the math and sciences building, I was like clear on the other side of campus.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? So that's where I was. And then the one time where I got like, oh, maybe I should take a computer science class as a hobby. Mm-hmm. I was like, I was in the middle of that class. I was like, this was the worst mistake of my life.
Oh no.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
And I barely got through that.
Oh gosh.
But that is, I love the fact that you like had just such a variety of interests in both the maths and then the social sciences, economics, and business, and then you also have like this love of medieval history and literature, and having those two parts of you.
Yeah.
I think that's really, really cool.
Thanks. It's been a fun journey through all of that, and I think I managed to, well, confuse a teacher, but also combine a lot of that. I did as one of my elective classes, my very last semester in undergrad. I did a class in Russian literature. It was Tolstoy and Dostoevsky.
Wow.
And my final paper was an economic treatise against a statement that Dostoevsky had that was something like, man cannot be summed up in tables and numbers or something like that.
Wow.
And I went, oh, really? Challenge accepted. So I mapped through all of the reading that we had done of Dostoevsky, I mapped the motivations of his characters and created a model. I mean, it was this very simplistic setup as a linear regression model, essentially, but a very simplistic model of, okay, based on the specific coefficients for the importance of these factors in your characters, I could guarantee that I could figure out what they would do.
Oh, Lexy. That is so cool. I would have actually loved to see that conversation with Tolstoy and you. How fun would that be? How fun would that be?
That would be pretty cool. That would be a pretty fun conversation.
I was on the other spectrum. I'm like reading that going, oh my gosh, highlighter. Yes. Put that on a bumper sticker. That's me. Yeah. And you're like, wait a minute.
That would be like, I have in my head this, like, I feel like if you read a lot of different authors, you kind of get a sense of like, all right, who would you want to have? If you could have the ultimate dinner table conversation, whom would it include? To me, it would be Ben Franklin, Mark Twain, Dostoevsky. Those three would be at that table. So like, I feel like there would be just some really fun dialogue in that. And that group expands, like my ultimate dinner party, whenever the time and opportunity presents post life, I will have this dinner party. But yeah.
I like that. That's cool. Anybody from the medieval era you throw in as well?
Oh, well, so it's a little tough because there are very few known authors from the medieval era. Most of what we have is later. The period that I would truly want to understand more about is, of course, what we call the Dark Ages, which no one understands, which is why it's called the Dark Ages. I don't think that I would want somebody like Chaucer there.
Okay.
I might. I don't know. I would.
He can write rhymes as you're having the conversation.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Shakespeare's an easy out on that. That's, again, it's later period. Anything in that time is later period. I have a book of 14th century verse and prose that I got in an antique shop years ago, and it's just got some cool stuff. And I would love, if I could figure out who the authors were of any of that, that would be pretty fun. So yeah.
That's very cool. All right, so you finish your undergraduate work, and you decide, instead of 3 majors, I'll stick with 2, and I'll get some minors too. One.
End of the day, but I moved it from being a Bachelor of Arts to a Bachelor of Science, which was a struggle. I had to prove that I could do math, ironically.
And then you go on to graduate school, and this is where you got your master's in economics.
I wanted to get my master's in economics, and so an interesting story about that. I went to Brandeis for my master's. At the time, the graduate school there was the Graduate School of International Economics and Finance, which was like exactly what I wanted. I wanted international econ, I wanted to do econometrics and all of that. In that program, because it was an international program, if you were a US-based student, they required that you did a semester abroad, which was fantastic. I was all about it. Super on board with going to somewhere else. I ended up spending my semester in Rotterdam at the Erasmus University in Rotterdam, and but that semester was when all the math-based courses for econ were offered. So all the econometrics, all the econ stats, all of it. So But it actually worked out pretty interestingly because I took a lot of finance courses. That's where they had a lot of the math. And this is part of where I founded that principle of I think somebody's either an econ person or a finance person. I did take a lot of finance courses. I took a lot of courses that involved coding, actually, because I'd had maybe one semester in undergrad where I used a little bit of R. And other than that, I'd never been a programmer. I honestly thought coming out of undergrad that I would never have to code anything because computers were moving so fast, programs were moving so fast that I thought by the time I get out of school, it's just going to do it for me. I won't have to program anything. Like, why would I need to know code? You know, silly me. But here I am with how many programming languages that I know. But at the time, I took a lot of finance, and then I went to this semester abroad, missed out on the opportunity to do a lot of the economics courses there, and instead took consumer marketing and marketing research and some other courses that, while not economics, were actually really wonderful background for the types of work that I've been doing since, which is more of the data analysis stuff. You use certain types of data analysis in economics, econometrics, all of that. There are very fundamentally different ways to approach data when it's consumer-oriented or marketing-oriented, which is where I kind of ended up going. And I'll tell you, even to this day, some of the books that I had from that program are on my shelf, and they're the ones that get pulled out more often than not. For a lot of the work, if I need reference material, a lot of that comes from marketing research and consumer behavior.
It's funny because in all the interviews we've done for Data Talk, and I think we're coming up on 100, no one I've talked to has ever come from the econ and marketing side. So I think it's very fascinating that you had that marketing background and data analysis just brought you right in.
Yeah. It's an interesting one to me now, looking at kind of the Drew Conway diagram, right? The Venn diagram of data science, of how you have kind of the three houses of data science. You have your programming, your code, you have your math and statistics, and you have business acumen, kind of that business understanding. And I feel like I was out of the coding part of that, but the other two are where I kind of came in. And to me, code can be learned. Code can be trained up. There are so many programs out there that'll teach you R, they'll teach you Python, they'll teach you JavaScript, whatever you need to learn, Julia, all of them. But understanding the business is something that you get over time and with background and with really being deep in the weeds of how a business operates and what you're trying to accomplish. And that is a very different approach. And so I think that I took, some people would say it's the less technical way in, and then I've become more technical over time. But I feel like it leap started my career in getting into applied economics, applied statistics, and really that is what became data science. Data science didn't come out of somebody knowing code and saying, I'm just going to code an algorithm for funsies. It came out of a business problem saying, I need a solution, and I'm trying to figure out why this is happening and plan for the future. And so I feel like I got kind of a head start in that.
Yeah, no doubt, because you're studying the marketing side, the business side, and then with the econ classes you taken, those are like huge parts of what you'll be doing in data science, understanding the industry, the business side of it.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of that econometrics relies on statistics. It's the same types of foundational understanding that you would get in a math and stats specifically for data science, except of course when I was in college and grad school, data science didn't exist. So, that was, we were statisticians. I was a statistician at one point. Insert pocket protector, and I'll just put some tape right here. But it was like the least sexy thing to be. And then all of a sudden data science is a term and it's like the most sexy job.
Right.
And I'm like, wow, I wish I could tell my 12-year-old self it'll be okay. Math is awesome. And being a nerd is going to be super cool when you're an adult.
So you mentioned that you were like, oh, I don't have to worry about learning code.
Yeah.
But then, so what point did you like start to dive into? Okay, I need to start learning some code.
Um, I think it was probably, so I learned a little bit of, let's say, learned a very little bit of R in undergrad, very little bit, and then immediately forgot it. And then in graduate school, I used Stata and MATLAB. MATLAB, I think, was probably the most robust of the
Mm.
languages that I learned there. And then we also used SPSS statistics for some things, not the programming language, but mostly GUI based. And it wasn't until, I mean, a fair bit later, maybe 2 or 3 years out of undergrad, I had my first, well, not my first, my second full-time job, when I actually learned SQL. That was the first time I touched it. First time I'd ever thought about a database. And the irony there is that my first job, I was a business analyst, and what I was doing was creating a logical model on paper, not
Oh,
understanding
wow.
anything about databases, relations, any of that, just understanding, okay, what's cardinality? What is this data element? How does it relate? What happens if there's more than one? What are the restrictions? What are the opportunities? What does that get us? And being able to put together the pieces and see the whole system. And it's essentially, you're thinking about a very, very extensive data model. It was for a program that was going to be the back end for insurance companies, health insurance
Mm.
companies, to be able to have a single database-backed engine for managing providers, members, claims adjudication, all kinds of different subject areas. And I was analyzing all of that with no idea of what a database was. And then I learned SQL, a couple years later. And that was the first language that I really got deep into. And it's still one that I use every day in and day out. And it's something I tell a lot of up and coming data scientists. If they say, like, which language should I use? The first thing I'll tell them is SQL. I don't care if you use
Mm.
R, I don't care if you use Python, I don't care if you use Scala. You're going to need SQL in all of them, no matter what you do. So yeah, that was kind of my first and still my favorite programming language, and programming loosely, but programming language. But yeah, and then it's been, since then it was, what do I need? And after that it was SAS, because that was the industry standard for a
Mm.
very long time. And then I taught myself Python a couple of years ago, and it's been Python ever since.
That's nice. When you so so funny, I was on LinkedIn earlier today, and there was a discussion around SQL,
Mhm.
and they were talking about how there's some very seasoned data scientists were talking about how they're kind of annoyed at going for a job interview, and they say, "Oh, you need to take the SQL test," and they're like, "Pass."
Yeah, I mean, I get it. It seems so basic now, but I think that there are a couple of factors that I would think play into that. One is that folks who've been in the industry for quite a long time have seen the use of SQL, and it's so like old hat by now. Why would we need to have a test on it? Of course, we know how to pull our data together, like, obviously. But it's not necessarily something that data scientists coming out of school focus on. There's a ton of focus on R, a ton of focus on Python, a ton of focus on the cutting edge algorithms. Not as much focus on where does the data come from? How do you pull it together? What happens when it's at different levels of granularity and it's not fed to you in a pretty cleansed CSV file that you can just ingest into Anaconda? That is the biggest hurdle that I've had with a lot of the junior folks that come in that want to be data scientists. They're trying to be, they're trying to learn and grow into that. And the first thing, almost every time, the first thing they say is, wow, this data is really dirty. And that's after it's been cleansed, prepped, put into a data warehouse, governed. And I'm going, you think this is dirty? So, to data scientists who've been doing it for a very long time, I understand the frustration of like, wait, really? Like, you think I don't know SQL? How do you think I've done my job for the last X number of years? Because nobody else is going to pull data for me. But, it is a valid question from businesses who are interviewing candidates who are coming out of school and saying, I'm a data scientist because I just went through a program. And really, if you put them in front of a computer and you don't hand them the data on a silver platter, they're going to sit there going, well, I can't do this. I don't know what to do. Where's my data engineer? Where's somebody else who can bring this data together for me? And that's really kind of the team approach. But if you only have one position that you can fill and you need someone who can pull their own data, which, I feel data scientists should be able to pull data out of a database. You need to understand data. In order to do any data science work, you need to understand data and you need to have a conceptual understanding of the algorithms you're using. But that data part of it is so critical. It's something that we touch on the podcast as well, but it is absolutely true that you have to know your data. Like that is, I have some rules of analytics on my blog, and rule 0 is know thy data.
Yeah.
Like before anything else, before rule 1, which is no dying, know your data.
I love that, no dying.
Yeah, well, it's an important one.
Yeah, that's an important one. Oh my gosh, that is so funny. So when you are when you're looking to hire somebody to work with you on a project, or you're working with another team member and you're trying to gauge like their skill level, whether they'd be a good partner on a project with you. I'm curious what types of questions you ask or even tests you might give them. Like, here's a data set, tell me what you can find on X or something.
I haven't really done a lot of the here's a data set, go at it. I tend to let conversations flow when it comes to interviews, although I've gotten a pretty bad reputation in my company because people will come in and say that they're data scientists and not be able to explain, why they used a certain algorithm. They'll tell me, oh, I did this project and it got this great result. I'm like, okay, why did you do it this way? Or what was the question? And explain to me how this helped to impact the business or, what it got to the end of. And I'll find a point at which they have no answer. And my talent acquisition team at this point is like, we're going to bring you in when we just need to break something. Apparently, somebody who came in and interviewed, it was probably a year ago now, came in and interviewed with us. And I asked them questions about projects that they put on their resume that they had completed. And I was like, oh, okay, tell me about this. Like, you obviously are very proud of the work that you did. You put it on your resume. I expect you to be able to speak to it. It doesn't sound like a mean thing to do. I didn't think, but whatever. And they said things like, "Oh, I don't remember," or "I don't know," or they were very hesitant about it. And they had the title of data scientist. And I'm sitting there going, "How do you not How does it not indelibly sit in your brain that this is why you did stuff or this is what you got out of it?" And at the end of it, the talent acquisition guy walked this person out, and this person said to them, I don't know if I'm a data scientist. They really shook them. It wasn't like it was a difficult question. I wasn't sitting there saying, explain to me the finer points of neural networks or anything. Who is going to ask you that? You're not in academia anymore. Nobody cares. Does it work? How roughly does it work? Is it going to be valid for use? And what should I do with it? Those are the big questions to my mind. And if you can show me that you understand the data, that you understand the problem that you're given, why it's important to the business, what they're going to get out of it, and that the solution that you provide will answer their question, that's all I care about. I don't care how many different algorithms you throw at it. I don't want to hear about p-values usually. I don't want you to present them to a client, that's for darn sure. But make it usable and user-friendly for someone. And to some degree, that's how I approach content in general. On the podcast, in my content, when I'm explaining something technical, I'll either give a disclaimer like, warning, nerd talk about to happen, or I will say things in a way that makes it intelligible for someone who isn't a stats major or, you know, a PhD in math or something like that, because not everyone is, and they don't have to be. They have to know, is this going to do what I need it to do or not? That's it. It's the WIFM. I got that from a marketing guy, the what's in it for me, right?
Right, yeah.
Always keep that in mind with your audience. And so to me, when I'm interviewing somebody, I ask them, if you were to talk about this to an executive, how would you put it? How would you position this? And that's really a lot of what I look for is can you have a conversation where you're not going to fall back on statistical terminology? Can you position what you've done so that there's value in it? Can you explain to me why certain data was or was not included? Do you have a justification? Not that it has to be, an airtight, oh my gosh, otherwise the world will end. That's not it. But just, do you have a reasoning behind what you're doing that you can explain?
I love that. I mean, you're definitely touching on both the technical aspect of solving a business problem with data, but then also the soft skills needed, the self-awareness of how you're talking about that thing and who you're talking to, and are you talking about it in a way that's going to be important to that person? Yeah,
exactly. And I mean, obviously, where I am now, I'm a consultant. I've spent most of my time in marketing agencies and consultancies, and so I deal with clients who are not technical. They specifically hire the group that I'm in to be that technical arm for them and to know all of the technicalities without them having to understand all the nitty gritty. And so it's to me to make sure that they're comfortable with what we are doing for them. It's not to me to sit there and train them on every algorithm under the sun, because they have a day job and this is not what is most valuable to them.
For those who are just getting out of school, and maybe some of them might be going into consulting or starting their very first job at a company, are there any common mistakes you've seen with people who are just starting out?
There are quite a few. One is just understanding data, and the biggest hang up that I've seen in understanding data is granularity. Understanding that data exists at different levels, and combining it is a dangerous business if you don't understand how they relate. And that also, even if you're getting data from external environments, understanding how that can be brought in and what can and should be brought together in what ways. So that's one of them. The other one is really in presentation, understanding that nobody wants to know the metrics by which you're judging it unless it's something intelligible to the business. Businesses don't care about p-values. Businesses don't care about AIC. Businesses care about the amount of revenue you're going to generate and the amount of cost that you're going to save, or the amount of customers you're going to bring in, or whatever. So as long as you're comfortable with the fact that the algorithm will do those things and that the results will provide what's needed for that, that's really what the business wants.
Solid advice. Tell us about your podcast on data ethics. It's a very, very important subject. I'd like to see more podcasts, more people talking about data ethics. So tell us a little more about that show, why you started it, and some of the things you're covering.
Yeah, I fell into data science ethics. I never really thought about it until it was a couple of years ago now, and there was a question posed around the use of data in a particular client that was looking at, it was a banking client who was looking at which offers they should talk to a customer about when this customer called in. And we have data on, it's a banking customer, so we have birthday. Yeah. We know how old somebody is, for example. And the question that really sparked the conversation was, can we use their age to determine which offer to talk to them about? The problem is that in banking, you are not allowed to discriminate between offers based on age, right? It's a protected class. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the offers are applicable. So for example, we had an offer that was, somebody who's 5 years from retirement. Well, that's not necessarily going to be applicable to somebody who's in their mid-20s, for instance.
Right.
But if we can't use their age to determine whether they should receive that offer, we're going to talk to those 25-year-olds about retirement offers when they have no interest. Whereas if we have something that's like student loan consolidation, they would be much more interested in that. So, we had this big involved conversation, and I mean, it involved legal teams and compliance and all of this. And it really got me kind of curious about some of the other areas. And of course, we are also hearing more, especially lately, about data breaches and whether certain types of algorithms could or should be used in certain scenarios and so forth. We started to hear more about computer vision problems, natural language processing, a number of bots and AI applications and so forth. So, it really kind of got my mind spinning, and I started thinking about all the different potential topics in there. And my boyfriend actually said, you should do a podcast. It was a media that I never had thought about. My first inclination would, of course, be to blog. Some old school like that. So I was like, well, I could, I guess, but I don't know anything about recording and audio editing and all of that stuff. And it continues to be the hardest part of it for me, is the editing. But I was like, okay, I'll give it a try. And then I kept dragging my feet. And finally I recruited the help of my co-host, Marie, who's one of my best friends, actually. And so I said, I need somebody who can chat through this with me. And every time I would bring up a topic, she and I would just sit there and riff for
that's
hours.
so cool. That is so cool.
And I was like, you got to do this with me. So that's what it became. So we started sitting, in my house and in front of a microphone and recording. And it's really become, a passion project for me. I don't have corporate sponsorship. This is me doing all of it. Myself and Marie record, and then I sit there and edit and put music on the ends, and that's about it. I don't have advertising or any of that. So, it's been a really interesting journey in becoming a podcaster. But the other cool part is that now I approach some of the problems differently than I maybe used to in doing data science and in talking with my clients about data science, and really the way that I think about developing products and making sure that we're compliant with every best practice I can think of with regard to privacy and data use, and really making sure that we're giving good guardrails for making sure that there's an ethical use of data beyond just the kind of governed, prescribed uses.
For the young data scientists out there who are maybe just finishing up school or just starting out in their careers, and they're beginning to work with data, what would be some questions that they should be asking themselves? Maybe like a handful of questions maybe that they might ask to make sure that they are being ethical with the data that they're working with.
The first one that I would say is, it's kind of the golden rule. How would you feel if you were at the receiving end of the outcome of this algorithm? And think of it in a couple of ways. And this is a tough one because it's kind of like this role playing, and it's, if I were the person who's the beneficiary of this or not the beneficiary of this, but I somehow found out about it, what does that do and how would I feel? Because more often than not, that's where things start to get really hairy, right? Or if it's like, if there's a question of, should I be doing this? At all? You know,
Right.
that, like, if it makes you feel uncomfortable, be uncomfortable and make sure it's voiced that you're uncomfortable with what's going on. You know, it's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. Trust me, there are plenty of data science jobs out there, and you being an ethical data scientist is better than getting, you know, called on the carpet and being the scapegoat of a big company. So, you know, be uncomfortable and get more perspectives. So if you ask, and make sure it's not just people in your company, right? This is a big problem that's come up, is trying to get the perspectives of really radically different groups and saying, you know, how would this affect you, right? Think beyond your box, think beyond your bubble. It's very easy to look around and say, well, everybody I know would be positively affected, so what's it matter? Well, yeah, but what about the rest of the folks that are customers of your company or what have you, that aren't in that echelon of society, and you know, in the same rough financial, socioeconomic situation as you? And you know, just because it doesn't hurt you doesn't mean it doesn't hurt anybody. So you know, that's a big part of it. Within the podcast, we've actually started putting together this kind of ethical framework. We've done it a little bit surreptitiously, but it's in there, and we are going to have kind of a bigger reveal of the full concept once we have all of the individual components recorded. But there are a bunch of concepts in there around protecting privacy, for example, collecting data carefully and really thinking about what you're doing, being transparent about how you train an algorithm and what data you're using for that algorithm and so forth. And be willing to revisit over time all of the things that you do, because, you know, as people are impacted by what you do, and as people do feel the repercussions, you might realize that there are unintended consequences of what's happened. And so you may need to kind of rethink how you're approaching the problem.
That's awesome. Is this resource going to be available on your website eventually?
Yes. The episodes that are out there, I will tell you, all have an alliterative title. And eventually they will all come together to form a word.
Ooh.
I know.
I love puzzles.
It's yeah. So it's a fun one. I'm excited for it, and it's something that I've actually talked at some live events about a little bit. But this is something that I'm really excited to get the remainder of that content up. But we keep having more topics to cover, and it keeps getting pushed back. So and we actually just had our first interview episode we recorded a couple weeks ago. So there's just tons of content to be sifted through and put out there. And you know, unfortunately, I don't have all the time in the world to work on the podcast. So you know, it gets a little bit. I wouldn't say forgotten, but backburnered at times. And so I'm trying to work on getting it into a better cadence again.
Well, I mean, it's just great that you're doing that, because, you know, these are the types of conversations we need to have more of. And it's awesome that you and your friend are, you know, just having these conversations, recording them, and like, okay, it's not going to be perfect, but I'm just going to put it out there and let this, you know, let's have more conversations, let's get more people involved. And I love where you're headed with, you know, creating this this framework that other people can begin to use and be more thoughtful as they're working in data science. And so I love that you're doing that. For those that are not familiar with the website, where should they go to see all the episodes and also see the upcoming framework when it's there?
Sure. datascienceethics.com. And the podcast is available on pretty much every app. If it's not available on the app that you prefer, let me know. You can reach out at datascienceethics@gmail.com. And just let me know that there's a missed podcast app, and I will make sure that it gets on there. And if you want to check out any of the back catalog, obviously you can reach it through either of those. And it's all available, and it's all free. There is a members-only podcast if people are interested, but I don't want to take this opportunity.
Oh, there is. No, please.
Okay.
As well.
There is a members-only podcast. We recorded an episode. It is going to go up as soon as I possibly can, and it may honestly at this point just be an unedited free flowing, whatever.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah.
The members only podcast is data science ethics in pop culture.
Ooh.
So our first episode was a Star Trek: The Next Generation episode that I loved. That I was like, oh my gosh, I have to. And then there are some other ones I know that everyone's saying, you got to talk about Black Mirror. And it almost seems like a cop-out. So it's just too easy. They specifically set it up for that. But there's a lot on the docket of things to watch and then comment on. There's a lot on. And so we will be starting to post that. And I may well just put it up, like I said, unedited and just say the heck with it.
Just do it.
Because otherwise editing takes forever. I'm just going to say that now.
Totally.
The other one, and I referenced this a little bit earlier before we started recording, is there will be kind of some outtakes, things like with my dog barking or jingling because they have jingly collars, whatever it might be. So there'll be little like snippets of other random things. We've also got some really long form episodes that may end up being members only podcasts. So the podcast format is usually somewhere between like 15 and 25 minutes. I try and keep it no more than a commute is kind of my general thought. And if you're commuting more than a half an hour, 45 minutes, I'm so sorry for you.
It just means 2 episodes.
It just means multiple episodes, but still, I feel really bad that you have that bad of a commute. My commute is from my bedroom to my living room, so it's not too bad. But no more than a commute. But we do have the very first thing we ever recorded was 2.5 hours of a discussion between Marie, myself, and my boyfriend about YouTube. And then we didn't like the way that it went, so we recorded another 2.5 hours.
What?
Oh, yeah.
No, you did not.
I have 5 hours of content that I think about it, and it just makes me shiver of how long it would take to try and edit that down. So at some point, there may be just a mega episode that's put out there on the members only podcast, including breaks when like I had to take the dogs out or got a phone call or who the heck knows. But yeah.
I think that's so cool. No, totally do that, because I feel like nowadays with podcasting, like if there's a lull or something, I'll just like skip, 15 seconds skip. I mean, I do that all the time. So especially when you have like that much content, it's like, to edit it, it's going to take forever. Yeah. You know what? I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
Make it available.
What I might do is like a little intro of like, guys, this is unedited. Sorry. Also, it's now 1.5 years old, before all these other things happened. So like there might be a YouTube 2.0, at this point 3.0 that I have to record. We'll see. We'll see.
That is so cool. Well, I love everything that you're doing and the podcast, and now just found out about this membership version podcast. Very, very cool. Thank you for being on Data Talk, for sharing your journey with us. And everyone, make sure to go check out the Data Science Ethics podcast, subscribe, join the community that Lexy has formed. And this is a topic that we all need to be invested in and staying up on. So
it definitely hits all of us. Whether we're data scientists or not, we are affected by algorithms and data science. So be informed.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Lexy.
Thank you.